Welcome to the Trash Cats Trash Cast. I'm Richard.
I'm Steven.
And today we're going to get some doctors to pull our plugs and bury us in a shallow grave. With our consent, of course.
Have to have that consent because today we're discussing voluntary euthanasia.
I'm fucking here for it.
But first, how was your week, man?
It's pretty good. It's been slower lately. You know, I've talked about our seasons dying, so I've been getting shit done around the house a little bit more. I've been getting my art studio cleaned up and set up so I can actually use it, and it's not just covered in a bunch of tools. And
how's the winter war plan? Are you gathering your frosted armor as you prepare to go fight in the great white wilderness?
Yeah, I pulled out my winter clothes. Is that what you're asking?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I pulled out the big coats and the fucking coveralls and shit, and I'm ready for it.
I think I used to be a dirty street punk, and I
used to be.
I wore a leather.
Now you're an indoor street punk.
I'm an indoor intellectual. But I did wore leather for a handful of years. But besides that, I only ever have worn sweatshirts for winter. I just wear 2 hoodies, and I'm so cold all the time.
I just suffered.
It's terrible.
Nah, I fuck with layers. I fuck with, I got 2 nice leather, fake leather coats now.
Dude, what about a Dalmatian fur coat?
Go straight up Cruella de Vil on this motherfucker.
I would love that. If I could have a Dalmatian robe, oh my god, and some puffy slippies, I would never wear any other clothes.
Oh
ever.
Man, are hyenas protected animals?
Not to me.
There's got to be a way. I mean, someone's got to make even a fake hyena fur.
Yeah, hyenas
pattern
are my spirit animal. I would love that.
That would be the gift of gifts.
Oof.
So you can wear something over top of your 2 hoodies.
I've noticed this pattern as I'm editing these episodes. We talk about killing animals much more than I ever anticipated doing in this podcast. And if people didn't know how much we love animals, probably come off as total psychos to start a podcast about killing dogs and hyenas. But
we love them so much, we want to wear them like clothing.
Need to be closer.
We want to wear their skin.
It's actually disgusting people wear fur, though, right?
It really is. It's fucked. Especially when it's like, oh, coat is chinchilla. It's like, do you know how small fucking chinchillas are? How many of them had to die?
It's a lot of
to
dogs.
make that coat? And it's like, yeah, it's a lot of dogs. I killed so many dogs today.
What about alligator leather? I get a little more on the fence about that, but I still think it's probably bad.
Yeah, alligators are kind of a nuisance, but still.
In some areas they're like way down in population. Like they're having to like rebreed and release gators in some areas now, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. Meanwhile, iguanas are taking over Florida. They freeze in the trees over the winter and they'll fall out of the trees. Like people have been knocked out by frozen iguanas because they go into like a bear in the cave. What do they call it?
Hibernating?
Yes. They hibernate basically in a semi-frozen state and they fall from the trees. So Florida has like different hunting and fishing rewards for iguanas where you get paid like $10 an iguana. And there's guys that just make their living going around shooting iguanas on the banks and stuff. Like they'll
you go around in the wintertime just shaking trees.
That's the big thing is in winter, that's when they make like half their year's money. Like in 3 months or whatever.
Wild shit.
What a life.
Fuck Florida.
Chill week.
Yeah, it was good. How you been?
I'm okay. I feel like a salted slug right now. I feel puffy and dehydrated and just a little mentally slow, but I'm okay. Week's just been more of the same. I did go to Blink last weekend. Not enough cool shit, but had fun with the people I went with. It was awesome hanging out with Sam and Megan and Will and Sarah. And then, I don't know, everything else has just been kind of more of the same. I've just been kind of doing my thing. But tomorrow I get tattooed, so that's always a good day.
That's a plus.
I'm like 20, maybe 30 hours into my back piece. So excited to make a little more progress, and then I'm going to start something else next week too. So I'm in it to win it.
Did I tell you, I'm embarrassed to say this, to admit this. I only learned that snails are different from slugs biologically within the last year. I just learned that. I thought that like a slug was just a snail,
right?
What outgrew its shell.
Yeah, I don't really know the exact differences, but I feel fairly confident that I knew.
Slugs actually have a shell inside of them. They evolved from snails, and they don't need the shell anymore.
They absorbed
it's like inside of them, yeah, more or less.
Exoskeleton and made it internal.
yeah, basically.
That way, home is wherever they are. They're always home.
Yeah, home is where my body is.
Yeah, where my mucousy abdomen slithers.
I want a cross stitch that says that on my wall.
Home is where my mucousy abdomen slivers. I like that. That reminds me of the if you're not fucking me or not feeding me, you're irrelevant. I feel like that cross stitched would be pretty good too.
That would be good.
Well, you got any honorables you want to throw out?
You already know I don't.
Cool. I got a couple quick ones. So I guess these will be... normally we try to do, if we have any dishonorables at the end, but I think these are going to be both honorable and dishonorable mentions. So to start it off, this week has been pretty interesting in both the entertainment and art worlds. Had a couple interesting events going on. This week, it's really felt like everyone's just sucking off Vincent van Gogh's dead dick.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty disgusting.
Don't suck off a dead guy.
All this necrophilia that's going on. But there's that, and then everyone's hating on Kanye for good reason. And then also, I don't know if you saw this one, the CIA started a podcast, like an official.
I did see that. They're trying to compete with us.
What a terrible psyop. They think they can just hijack our lane.
Now, here's the thing. Do the people that are on that podcast actually have full-time jobs within the CIA?
Yeah, the first episode is an interview, I believe, with the current director. If he's not the current director, he's like one of the top higher-ups currently. And he's talking about how intelligence gathering and how the CIA with the president and all the White House decided to release classified intel that they've had in regards to the Russia and Ukraine stuff and how that helped. Like they go into some things, but it's so bland and boring. I mean, I think it's only the one episode so far, but I do think it's like a bad precedent to set. I mean, it's smart of them. They should have been doing it a decade ago, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's like the ultimate recruiting tool, like how the Army used to have the first-person shooter game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge game. That got so many young, dumb gamer dudes to pilot drone missiles for the government. Like, the CIA having a podcast is a smart thing to do, but it just feels so cringy.
It's our tax dollars at work.
Yeah, like we're paying CIA losers to make podcasts.
Let's wait for them to get their Patreon set up. Get that exclusive content.
Will you get a tax write-off if you pay for their Patreon?
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Join the CIA OnlyFans. We're like a few steps away from idiocracy.
How cool would that be if you could? I feel like every celebrity, or not every celebrity, every politician should be forced to have nudes, and that you can look up your politician naked at any time.
At any time.
Yeah.
Like real. I mean, a combination of like some like put them in goofy costumes or lingerie, and then, and then other ones that are like just super bad, uncomfortable pictures.
Hardcore bondage.
Yeah. If you're going to do public
new one on
service,
OnlyFans this week. Biden was getting down and dirty over there.
Oh, Jesus.
So, real quick, starting off with
full penetration. Sorry, go ahead.
Starting with the Van Gogh. So this week we covered the first group. I believe it was this same protest group. There was remember they glued themselves to a painting? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. I believe it's the same protest group. But this week, 3 climate activists appeared in London court on Saturday on charges of criminal damage after protests included throwing soup over Van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. It's so all right.
This is Andy Warhol's fans reminding the art world that he still got shooters out here.
I actually was kind of wondering if I feel like them using the soup probably is related to that, but I also wonder if they got soup because it was something you could buy in the gift shop and they couldn't bring other stuff in.
I figured it was something they could have it in a backpack or something and explain it like, oh, I'm traveling, and if they were pressed for it, like, this is why I have this. But also they can get it in, and it's a messy thing within an easy to like take and throw container.
Yeah. So first off, this painting, right? Everyone's seen this stupid fucking painting. Van Gogh's sunflower paintings. We did a whole deep dive on Van Gogh. Check out I forget what number it is, but we did our research on Van Gogh. His sunflower paintings are clearly his most boring, apathetic, dirty ass, abstract,
uninspired ass work.
Just mentally ill, alcoholic paintings of sunflowers.
Because he got in trouble for painting the girls at the fucking the church or whatever. He was so
didn't
tired. Have models anymore. So
he was so tired of being scolded for pedoing out that he just alcoholic gazed into a field till the sun melted his brain and he drew some fucking sunflowers. So first off, the paintings weren't damaged. So that's the top thing. Apparently the frame got a little soup on it, right? But the painting is under glass and there was no damage. And second off, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, apparently all of social media, and I don't understand.
Apparently everybody does.
Yeah, because it's so stupid all over the news and all this shit. Like, none of these people give a fuck about Van Gogh, and they definitely don't give a fuck about that painting. But people are like enraged. It's so goofy. Now, to criticize the protesters, it's clearly not an effective way to raise awareness to their cause. Like, you're not, just because you got your group's name on the news, like, doesn't help them. So it seems goofy, but it's also pretty apparent, like, that they look so young. They are clearly, like, just maybe misguided. I won't even say misguided, but maybe misguided kids fighting for something that they feel all the adults in their life have failed to do. So I don't know. I feel like they had to be aware they weren't going to actually damage it either. So it's like whatever.
It's one of those, like, I get it, if they're coming from a rebellious point of view, like, we're going to do something, but that's just the best that they could get away with. Yeah. And it's like, at least we're doing something. And it's like, I get you. Like, your heart's in the right place here.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect anyone's day.
No. It just
except for the fucker that's got to clean it up.
Yeah. Well, it just gets them a court date too. So
yeah, exactly.
With that
gets
said,
you a charge over nothing.
Yeah. With that said, I think it's fair to say the Trash Cats, we both wish them the best in court.
Yep, absolutely.
Good luck. I hope you get out.
This is why we need a Patreon, so we can save up money to, bail criminals out of jail.
Yeah, to bond out terrorists. Yeah. Is that
Trash Cats bond?
Second, I have been screaming this for years. I've been on the mountaintops yelling this to any loser who would listen. Kanye always has been and always will be an absolute piece of trash.
Yup.
Now, his recent statements, while they have been pretty horrible, he has mental health stuff going on, which is no excuse at all, because it's not like these are one-time events either. He's said stuff like this going back 10 years, but his mental health is a factor, and to some extent, the mainstream media is slightly manipulating things he's said. Like, he said a lot of crazy shit recently, a lot of anti-Semitic things, but it's also being pushed with a narrative that I don't think he is adult enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, he doesn't have a mature understanding of what he's saying. So when the media tries to play it like he has this like well thought out conspiracy, and it's just like it's just, I don't know. It's just stupid. But even worse than the things he's saying, what he is most guilty of is being an absolute dog shit rapper and producer.
Yep.
And fashion designer and architecture, design, everything. He just sucks at everything. Fuck him. And since we're doing our episode on euthanasia, I'd like to say hashtag euthanize Kanye.
Get it fucking trending.
We're done with Ye. He's done. Trash cats are kill shotting Kanye. He's just such a fucking loser. And Jay-Z has big squirrel cheeks, for the record. Let the record show.
How many acorns you got in there, Jay?
And Biggie was bloated as fuck. They all suck. Fuck these dudes. Listen to...
I like Biggie Smalls.
No, he's what a loser.
Okay.
Chubby Man can't enunciate. That's what his album should be called.
I think you and I have talked about this before. You prefer Tupac over Tupac and Biggie, right?
Yeah, but Tupac sucks too. He was a little actor kid who like pretended to be a gangster till he died like one. Dude, they all suck.
I like Biggie shit because at least it's like it's dark. It's like
I know he's yeah.
He talks about like call me something about Lucifer, real name Christopher, like about like robbing you and shit.
If you're a real hip hop fan, you have to respect the role they played. But if you're honest as a fan of music, most of it sucks. That's like I don't know. If you're really devoted to the genre or whatever, I feel like you can show them love, but I feel like
as far as like mainstream, like heavy hitter gangster hip hop shit, like that was the more aggressive shit that was mainstream. The first like real aggressive mainstream shit. There
was a couple things, but nothing that ever would get that big for its time. Yeah, if you want some real shit, go listen to
Necro
Robbery 95 by the necrophiliac himself, Necro. That interview was pretty cool, and he has some, I think it was like 8 years ago, but some semi-recently old tracks that dropped from like the 90s that were pretty wild.
Yeah.
But I think that's enough of the nonsense. We should, I guess, get moving, right?
Yeah, I'll get into it here.
So, voluntary euthanasia. Kick us off, Rick.
So the word euthanasia comes from the Greek words for good death, EU, which is well, and thanatos, which is death.
God, that's so good. I love those breakdowns.
It's a good death. Yeah, good euthanize. Etymology. I love that.
Euthanize is such a beautiful word, too.
It is.
Youth of the eyes. A good death.
So euthanasia is the practice of intentionally ending life to eliminate pain and suffering. Different countries have different euthanasia laws. The British House of Lords Select Committee on Medical Ethics defines euthanasia as a deliberate intervention undertaken with the express intention of ending a life to relieve intractable suffering. In the Netherlands and Belgium, euthanasia is understood as termination of life by a doctor at the request of a patient.
The Dutch law, however, does not use the term euthanasia, but includes the concept under the broader definition of assisted suicide and termination of life on request. Euthanasia is categorized in different ways, which include voluntary, non-voluntary, or involuntary. Voluntary euthanasia is when a person wills to have their life ended. This is legal in a growing number of countries. Non-voluntary euthanasia occurs when a patient's consent is unavailable, and this is legal in some countries under certain limited conditions in both active and passive forms. Involuntary euthanasia, which is done without asking for consent or is against the patient's will, is illegal in all countries and is usually considered murder.
In some countries, divisive public controversy occurs over the moral, ethical, and legal issues associated with euthanasia. Passive euthanasia, known as, quote, pulling the plug, is legal under some circumstances in many countries.
Active euthanasia, however, is legal or de facto legal in only a handful of countries. For example, Belgium, Canada, and Switzerland, which limit it to specific circumstances and require the approval of counselors and doctors and other specialists. In some countries, such as Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, support for active euthanasia is almost non-existent. It's definitely very controversial. Even in the US, it's not legal everywhere, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's not legal in more states than it is.
Yeah, it's definitely the de facto legal thing where it's like there's no law against it. That occurs in some places where it's like there's nothing like against it, so
there was do you remember that whole like right to die movement? It was like it caught
I didn't until you just said that, but
yeah, I think it was like the 2010s era. It caught a little bit of political steam, but it really this feels like one of those issues that comes up every 5 to 10 years when there's like a big case or like a coma case or something kind of in the mainstream news. And then after that case kind of dies down, it kind of gets forgotten about for a while. It's one of those ones that feels like the public or people in general don't fully want to address or face. So
it's the end of life shit. And it's like, that's the scariest part of life.
Yeah.
You know, it's the most controversial part of it, especially with like religion and shit and like moral.
Yeah, and that's part of what, sparked this episode for us was that recent case. It was a 23-year-old that was struggling with depression and stuff. I think they lost their vision in one eye from diabetes and have been trying different medications for years. It's actually kind of a hard case to find online. There isn't a ton of info on it, but I think
the one you're talking about, the 23-year-old, that was a Belgian woman. The
mother found out that the person was enlisted for euthanasia and freaked out.
The girl was battling PTSD after like terrorist attacks.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
She was having a lot of issues with that for like 6 years. She was on all kinds of different medications and stuff and like tried all these different options. And
when I was reading the one article, it wasn't clear. Did she die?
Yes.
It did happen? Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that is sad when it's somebody that young. Like, it sounds like clearly mental health was in a poor state. And I would imagine with that there were some physical issues, but if they were doing better mentally, they easily could live a long life. And that's sad for the suffering to be so great that is on the table.
When the quality of life isn't worth the quantity.
That is a great way of putting it. Fuck. So we both watched a couple debates and I think some interviews and stuff. One of them was with a very well-spoken professor, and he was debating a priest.
Yeah, the definition they decided to use was from a previous debate on the same matter. It was with Archbishop Anthony Fisher, and the definition that he gave, that they offered and that they agreed on to use for the sake of debate is an act or calculated course of omission intended to shorten life with a supposedly merciful motivation.
I think that's a fair definition.
Yes.
Because it's so complicated, because the exact the exact choice in both definition and I don't know, all the logistics and specifics change how the conversation around the concept goes quite a bit too.
Yeah.
So it felt, by making it apparent to state that the intent is for a merciful release of some sort. Is
the intent changes so much.
Yeah, it's the only way to have a fair debate or conversation around it, because if you can't agree that, at least whether you agree it's right or wrong, if you cannot agree that the intent is mercy, then it's going to be very difficult to have the conversation around it.
Yeah. That's one of those, I know you've heard the stories of people that are like afraid to, get put in the hospital because they, their children or their spouse or whoever, stands to gain a lot from their death if they're like living on a machine or something like that. And they decide they're given the option, like, do you want to keep them on the machine or like whatever? And it's like, nah, man, pull the fucking cord. Like,
that's a tricky position.
It's like, that's not done with the intent of, merciful motivation. That's
right. That's like, hey, this is my chance to get rid of this person.
Yeah.
Dude, one of my buddies, he had super sick. He's the person I'm trying to write about. Extreme cirrhosis of the liver, critically ill. And at one point, he had even gone to the extent of signing a DNR. What, DNR? Do not resuscitate?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he overdosed intentionally, suicide shit. Doctor brought him back, either ignoring or not knowing. Because you might not know if somebody comes in.
Yeah, I can see where the first reaction is going to be.
Because what do you do? Like, go research who they are?
Yeah, let me look up their files first and shit.
Right. So they brought him back. And it was like a bad overdose, right? And they brought him back, and he was screaming at them that he had a DNR. The doctor, some time passes, they leave, and he's in his room alone. And he had his stash of dope in his shoes still. So he shoots up again in the hospital. Overdoses. After they know he has the DNR, the doctor revived him again.
Wow.
Anyway, he wakes back up. He is livid. Dude, they ended up leaving him alone again without realizing he had dope left. And he overdosed a third time intentionally. And they brought him back a third time. That's fucking wild.
Yeah, it is. What's the point of the DNR at that point? I mean, I get where they're coming from to that extent of like you're just trying to commit suicide in this hospital.
I don't know how DNR works in relation to a suicide attempt, because I feel like there could be some loopholes or reasoning that if you're not mentally well, that they don't have to abide by it. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But that is a pretty big risk of that doctor.
It's pretty fucking wacky.
Unless they have to revive you still. I don't know. But it was really interesting, because I met him right after he got out of the hospital for that. So it was a strange time to meet.
When you've given up at that point, when you've to the point where you get a second chance and you try again.
Yeah. Tried 3 times back to back. You're pretty sure at that point. And he was not a person that was defeated or I wish I could describe him, but he was not like an outwardly sad or distraught person. He just genuinely hated life and was more like, he found it funny that they kept bringing him back too. Which I think
that fucking Cage song, fucking Suicidal Failure.
I don't know that one, but
he's talking about like how he jumps off the Brooklyn Bridge and all this other shit, and like he keeps somehow he gets saved or he doesn't die, and he's just like, break a couple ribs and just like get up and like fuck. It's like,
man, yeah, I feel like any suicide survivor stuff like that happens all the time with the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, oh, like, man, that would suck so bad to be like really fucked up after an attempt like that, but you're still alive. Like,
yeah. I saw the other day I was driving through Royal Oak and I hadn't noticed it before. I noticed the sign, but I never like read it. But like there's a part where you have to walk across train tracks to get to like this other side of the road. And there's a, right by the train tracks, there's a suicide prevention helpline station thing. It's like, fuck, I wonder if that's like a thing that they have to put up there or if they had an incident there.
They've had an incident. It is pretty surprising. I was looking up some stats at one point. It is surprising how many, and it's almost always alcoholics or addicts that try to commit suicide by train. Like, it's a lot. It's a surprising amount of people that try to get run over by trains. So they must have had something happen. But just for the sake of clarity, this episode, we're really going to try to, we're talking about stuff we find interesting at the moment, but we're really going to try to make the distinction between voluntary euthanasia, which... Yeah,
either, terminally ill or in some cases like depression, mental illness and shit like that, where it's like...
Extreme suffering.
Yeah, extreme suffering of, whether mentally or physically, whatever.
And while it does overlap with suicide in so many ways, it is distinctly different. And I'm pretty partial to thinking suicide is cool. I'm going to try not to drag those, I don't know, my own personal ideas into it too much because it is different, completely different.
Did I ever tell you my guillotine concept?
No, I do have some
suicide,
stories, but do it. Tell me.
So when I was not like super young, but like when the idea of suicide became like everyone goes to that point where you think about it. You know what it is, but like sometimes you go a little while before you actually like consider the resolve it takes to do it. And I wasn't even at a point where I was like considering it, but it made me think about like what, when you're in that moment, you can make a choice, like especially with a gun or something, that you make a choice in a fraction of a second to pull that fucking trigger and it ends everything.
Yeah.
So I decided if I really felt like I ever wanted to commit suicide, what I'm going to do is build my own guillotine. So first, what that would mean is I have to learn to build a guillotine. First of all, I have to learn how to do it and use the tools involved and whatever. And then, learn the sciences of it, get the blade together, figure out that whole system. And then by the time that it would take somebody to actually build a functioning and like good enough realistic guillotine that could do the job, you still want to do it. That's like the waiting period on buying a gun or something, if by the time that you get through all this and you
still want to,
you still want to do it, then you earned it.
You got the green light. Yeah. Cause at that point you will have made something you could be legitimately proud of. And if that doesn't give you the will to live, then fuck it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
That's my my cool take on suicide.
I had one of my shotguns at one point carved down the barrel. It said this is for them, not for us.
No, yeah, nice. Just a good reminder.
Yeah, dude, I needed that reminder at the time, but it made me laugh every time I'd see it too.
Good. That worked. It worked. I did want to specify some differences here.
Okay.
So the word euthanasia and assisted suicide are thrown around back and forth, and there's the differences between them is how they're done and who is taking the action.
Actual technical differences.
Right. Yeah. For the sake of what we're talking about, I think that we're probably going to go back and forth and use some of the words interchangeably because we're dum-dums and we're going to make that mistake.
We're big little smooth brains that will make lots of grammar mistakes. Yes.
No wrinkles in this brain.
Not a single one. It's like a marble up there. Make marble.
For the sake of, reality, I wanted to put this out here. So euthanasia actually refers to active steps taken to end someone's life to stop their suffering, and the final deed is undertaken by someone other than the individual, like a doctor. If the person concerned has requested this, it falls into the term voluntary euthanasia. So this is where they go in and a doctor gives them an injection or something of the sort.
Yeah.
So that's euthanasia.
You're suffering, and typically you're either not able to do it yourself, or you just want help to end your suffering. So you basically petition your doctor to do you in.
So assisted suicide is different because it's about helping someone to take their own life at their request. So the final deed is undertaken by the person themselves. Assisted dying can be used to mean both euthanasia, generally voluntary, and assisted suicide. However, some campaign groups use it to refer only to assisted suicide of terminally ill people. So this would be like you go to the doctor and they give you a prescription of morphine. Yeah, something. Yeah.
Yeah, I very strongly lean towards assisted suicide. I think, unless the person is unable, if a person is not in a state that they have the autonomy to figure this problem out themselves, I think it's fine to ask someone to help you. But
I definitely get where you could be in a form of, a suffering to that, extent, but it's like I said earlier, the resolve it takes to get there is.
But I feel like if you don't have that resolve, it's unfair to ask someone else to have that for you.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. If you don't have the grit to do it yourself, or you're not at the level where the suffering is so bad that you can have the resolve to do it yourself, then it seems unjust to make a demand, let's say, for someone else to do it for you.
My only argument against that is that I feel like you should, if we have the ability to do it, why not allow people to choose the way they go?
Because you're putting that
on someone else. Right. That's where the euthanasia itself, I lean a little bit to the side of that one. I think the assisted suicide thing is a little bit more easy to swallow.
Yeah. We'll get into, I think, our thoughts on that more here in a bit too. Sorry, I interrupted you. What is the third type? The third type euthanasia, assisted suicide, and
the third one is, and this is something that actually happens a decent amount, palliative sedation.
Okay. So
that's where they put you under a deep state of sedation until they die. Usually they dehydrate or something like that. And it's basically you go to sleep and you don't wake up situation.
So, medical neglect.
Yeah, more or less.
Cowardly, we will
but that is allowed in many countries, including Netherlands, France, Australia is another one I know.
They do it all the time in the US or modern medicine in general, where, just an old person is sick, and you could, when my grandma was passing, she had, dementia, all kinds of shit going on, but I think she may have died from pneumonia. And it's they, in theory, could have treated that pneumonia, but a lot of times when a patient's that critically ill, the decision is made hey, we don't have to treat this because, their quality of life is going to be so poor, or they're going to only continue to suffer, maybe even unconsciously, even if you get through this next hurdle. So,
and the thing that separates this strictly from neglect or the hospital choosing this is palliative sedation is where someone is requesting this still. They're still making the request sedate me.
Okay.
And so it's not directly they're just the hospital saying we're not going to why bother? They're just going to die in a week anyway.
It still seems cruel though.
Yeah, it does. But it's another one. The difference is the consent too, the intent.
Sure.
So I think that's
consent is what matters so much, because it's
hashtag consent matters.
Because it's the notification of intention, right?
Yes.
That's really all it is. But it matters in so many different medical contexts and like interpersonal interactions.
Yeah. So that's that whole thing with I don't know, I feel like it's just like I said, the choosing, letting people be able to choose how they go. I feel like since we have the option to do that now with modern medicine, to like regulate that in a way, that's mostly what makes me stand in alignment with the right to die, the euthanasia thing, where it's like, I do feel like there should be some kind of a waiting, something. It's not like you can just walk in, to the urgent care and you put your name on the waiting form, and then within an hour you're fucking getting shot up or whatever. But
you get your Denny's little light up vibrating.
Yeah. It's time. The doctor will see you now.
Yeah, anything this serious should have a medical level of gatekeeping, right?
It's a good time to use gatekeeping.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like there's definitely steps to take in between, deciding to do it and it actually happening. There should be, some obstacles to go through.
Yeah.
I think that's a very fine place to have those, but...
Or we'd have like free-for-all death carnivals at the hospital every weekend.
Yeah,
right?
You just have a real shitty month and you're like, fuck it.
Fuck it, yeah.
I think that's, I think people say that in jest sometimes, but I've had days.
A ton of people do. Like there's so many suicide attempts even where people clearly regret it afterwards.
Yeah.
Or
there's there's a collection of a couple different suicide attempts, things like that, where I think the one was the guy jumped from a bridge or something of the sort, and he realized, like, in the time it took before he even hit the water, it was like how many things that he could fix within like a week if he just really, like the things that were actually bothering them that he could change. Like I could solve all of this, no problem. And like it took that being there, and he, luckily survived, and he was able to actually make those changes. But I thought that was interesting. I think that's like when you flip the coin and you know exactly what thing you want, like as soon as that coin's in the air.
Yeah. That's some cruel enlightenment, right? That's some like Buddhist shit.
That's the worst time to be enlightened.
Yeah, you figure it out as you don't have a chance to necessarily fix it, right?
Right.
That's why I hate life. That someone could make that decision and all of a sudden know the answer. Like, that's like such a great analogy for what human existence is like.
Yeah.
That when you choose to end it, suddenly you know how to have made it worthwhile. I
mean, we should have been clued into it the whole time. It's like when you lose something, you're not going to find it until you buy a new one.
Of course.
You lose a set of keys or something. You go get a new car key made, and those motherfuckers are expensive.
Yeah.
And then you get home and you found it wedged between the couch where you checked multiple times.
Man, that coin trick flip really is the truth. Like when you're not sure on a decision, flip the coin, and if it lands on what you wanted, you're right, and if it doesn't, you should do what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you don't take the advice of the coin.
Stupid
the coin doesn't know what it's doing. It's a fucking piece of metal.
But it's
follow your intention.
It's like what is it? The divination rods or whatever.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So when approaching this topic, this is what my strategy of attack was. So I feel like we have to, just like for the definitions of euthanasia, we have to establish it involves the intention of mercy, right? That's foundational. But I feel like to have this conversation in general about ending human life, we have to establish the value of human life. Mm-hmm. We need a reason on why this matters or is okay or is not okay. And if we don't have an understanding of what the value of human life is, there's no weight to these conversations. And if people disagree on those values, which is quite common for people to disagree what life is worth. That's, I think, the foundation of where there's so many disagreements. So first off, for myself, I want to establish, when I think of what the value of human life is, it's so different for everyone. It's such a personal, subjective thing. But I believe there's no inherent value to human life. That our only value we give to it is out of a selfish self-preservation.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
It's neither good or bad. Like, just the fact that something's alive or that it is a human doesn't inherently give it value.
What your value is to you is different what someone else's value is for you, or what your value is for someone else.
Sure.
It's not going to be equal every time.
Right. But like, I don't think, like, if you could have a human baby, right? Let's say a 1-month-old infant. It just started kicking and screaming. It's barely alive, but it's a baby human being, little crying infant. That infant, to me, it is, you could say it's infinitely valuable or it is worthless. Like, there's no inherent value on it being good or bad, worth a lot or a little.
Right.
Based on the fact that it is a human baby.
Right.
But that's in a vacuum. Outside of that, the value of that person is going to be what that infant means to the people in its life, to other people. And I feel like we give, especially like strangers or to the people we're not connected, we give people human value because it's our biological or emotional inclination for self-preservation. If we value them, it makes us feel like we have inherent value. So I think it's kind of impossible to separate that and say, human life is worthless. I don't feel like that's fair to say at all.
Yeah,
but
I think that's the bad phrasing of it. I think I know what you're trying to say, though.
Yeah,
I think the word subjective is the key word.
Yeah.
It depends not only on the individual that's questioning it, but where they are in their life.
But let's say
their point of view.
But let's say we got a Mother Teresa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I heard she was actually pretty scummy. But let's say we got a Mother Teresa and she's like...
Shots fired at Mother Teresa.
Yeah, fuck her.
Heard it here first.
And she's like the perfect human being or whatever. And then we have... Dahmer's popular right now. We got Dahmer murdering and making sex zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle, we have our infant. Hasn't done anything cool. Just a boring-ass, crying-ass infant.
Just shits and eats.
Yeah. That's our, like, scale of human value to me. It's just because you're a human, you're the newborn infant. That's a neutral value. You haven't...
Mm-hmm.
You have no inherent value, positive or negative to me. But depending on who you are, what you've done with your life, what you mean to other people, that establishes your value.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I subjectively see it.
I think that what you do for people, I guess it does increase your value to them. And it's not just in a way of like them seeing you as more valuable, but like, your friends are more valuable to you because you know them and you enjoy being around them. Well, it makes your life better when you're with them.
Yeah. So like, you mean something to me as a friend. Like you offer me life value, right? Like that's what your friends, of course you care about their well-being and you want them to have a positive experience, but you're not friends with people if they don't also do something for you. Even if that is just the fact that they exist, it gives you a better life quality. It's value, right?
Now, let me throw this at you.
Yeah.
Schrodinger's a serial killer. So let's say tomorrow, you get a call probably from my mom or somebody, and they're like, "Oh no, he died in a shootout with the cops, and he apparently he was a serial killer this whole time. He was doing some Dahmer shit this whole time."
Yeah,
and,
I wouldn't be surprised.
So, but that being said, before learning that, like, or even after learning that, I guess, does that mean that my value depreciates?
I would say,
because it is a subjective thing. Like, of course, to the people that don't recognize who the Dahmer is in the crowd,
I would say with an objective perspective, to like a bird's eye God view, outside looking in, your objective value definitely degrades quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But to people in your life, I think it is, it's just like you find the video of R. Kelly peeing on a child, right? Like your value of how much you value them as an artist changes on how you see both that person and how bad what they did was. So
I'm glad you brought up R. Kelly, because that was going to be my next thing. Is I was going to bring up Michael Jackson and say, like, there's so many people that were distraught because their whole thing was like, does that mean I can't listen to Michael Jackson anymore?
Yeah,
it does. I love Lil Michael and some Jackson 5. Like,
nope.
I want to separate the person as the interactions that you had with that person from what they were actually doing, or what they were doing with their life. When you separate your interactions with that person, you are it's the word I want to use. You are, separating your point of view value on that person.
Yeah, that's separating. I feel like more specifically, maybe it's separating like artistic value from the person's value.
Yeah.
But I think for the record, we do have to admit anyone who likes Michael Jackson's singing is a pedophile, right? That's it's just kind of true, right? Like, I don't want to listen to a little boy sing.
Okay, I like a lot of Jackson 5 songs.
I bet you do.
And I enjoy. I can't say that it's something I would listen to on a I wouldn't like put it on by choice.
Yeah.
But there are some Michael Jackson songs that when they come on, you're like,
yeah,
all right, that's a good.
I think it's just a waste
it's unfortunate
of talent.
in the context of this conversation, but like PYT, Pretty Young Thing, that's a good song. But if you're putting it in the context that we were just talking about, it makes it a lot less of a good song.
Sure.
But
I always find the art versus the artist interesting. But
yeah, I mean, but even that being said, like in our circumstance, if I die, whatever, and everyone, like, it turns out I was a serial killer this whole time, you separating your interactions with me and the person that you knew me to be from the rest of that would be virtually the same thing as what we do with, celebrities and shit like that. When that happens, it's on a much deeper scale, because the interaction is more personal with each other.
Yeah.
Than it would be with, celebrity shit.
Yeah.
Like, the whole, like, oh, I don't, but it's Michael Jackson, like, whatever. Like, I don't know, like, go fuck yourself as a celebrity. You don't know them. You can still enjoy the music if you want to. Like, he's dead. It's not like, you're lining his pockets or whatever.
Elvis was a pedophile too. We all know it. He married his wife when she was like, I think 14, 15.
Oh.
And yeah, it never stuck. And granted, at the time, it was much more accepted, but still, it's, he didn't get stigmatized the way artists do today for that, for sure. And much of the rock stars from the 80s and 90s, well known for their underage shit. But overall, the main point, I feel like is worth stating when addressing voluntary euthanasia is that I feel like society farly overvalues the value of life. The stock on people's lives is artificially pumped. I don't think.
Now, do you think that's? I feel like that's partially true. I think a majority of that comes from people, saying that they're, what they value. They value it more when they're talking about it because they want to seem like a good person.
That's a good point. I have noticed like interviews with operating room doctors, like the doctors who make a real career out of emergency surgeries and stuff. Many of them are at least slightly dispassionate about their patients, right? Like they're not the ones with the best.
I think that's very fair though, considering if they're doing emergency shit, like they can't be connected.
Yeah, they can't be.
That would absolutely destroy you inside of like every week. How many people die in front of you.
But I feel like it's, to me, that type of a look at the death of a person, especially a person you don't know, that feels more of a fair and balanced, objective look at what the value of a human life is worth. So that's, I feel like that's kind of my war plan strategy of attack on this issue. So I want to start, so we had our infant, right? This dumb little infant hasn't done, all it does is take from the world.
Takes fucking Gerber baby over here.
It takes milk, it takes time, it takes diaper. All it does is take from the world. It's so selfish, right? So imagine that infant starts to keep growing a little bit older, keeps getting a little bit bigger, a little more coordinated, a little bit cooler, starts wearing fitted hats and cool jewelry. It's just grown up to be a real cool kid. And it's like, let's say
they listen to cool podcasts.
Yeah, they're definitely big Trash Cat fans.
Can you say they're in kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. When you said fitted cap, I immediately started thinking, this is like a teenager going into college or something.
No, just a really cool kindergarten kid. Now, now everyone, pretend with me. Pretend you are this kid, right? You're like in kindergarten or whatever. You're running around at recess. You're doing all these cool tricks with your sweet friends.
Trying to do Kamehameha waves in the playground.
Yeah, just really living it up, Trash Cat style. Now, you're running around and you hear a thump. One of those thump. And you look around and you see a bird on the pavement at recess. Its wings are mangled, just shattered bones. There's a pool of blood spilling out around it. It's blowing blood bubbles in its beak. It's a real mess. This thing is butchered. Now, we have to address this dying bird in front of us as a child, right? Now, I believe the goal should be the preservation of dignity. We're not surgeons. We don't have bird surgery tools with us. We don't have the skills yet.
You didn't have that when you were in kindergarten?
Not yet. And I was like first, second grade, right? I didn't have the full ER room yet. And I didn't have the finely tuned muscle control to do that surgery.
The fucking motor skills.
Yeah. So this bird is dying in front of you. I feel the goal should be the preservation of dignity. Dying birds do not have that option, right? They can't choose this. They don't have the autonomy to end their suffering.
Right.
But people do. We have free will. We have control over ourselves. We have that autonomy. So I believe, we stated voluntary euthanasia, it is about the mercy of it. The only responsible thing in this situation would be a mercy killing to quickly and as peacefully as possible end the suffering of this bird.
Yeah.
To not do so would be selfish. And I feel that selfish need is the need to keep people near you and suffering. I feel like if you keep that bird alive, it's because you want it.
Because you're a sick fuck.
Yeah. You want it to be suffering and near you because it increases the stock value on your shitty life.
I've told you about the skunk in the road, haven't I?
No.
So it was myself and a friend of ours who currently works closely with animals. So I'm not going to say their name. I was driving and we were going down Kellogg Road and we were fucking flying. There's nobody else on the road. We're cruising. Up ahead, we see a skunk like pulling itself across, like already it had been hit already.
Damn, that's fucked.
And it was far enough ahead where there was the debate of do I go around it or do I hit it and put it out of its misery?
Yeah, that's
hard. I opted to, it was like in the middle of the lane. And I opted to just stay on course is what we decided to do. We're both panicking in the moment. Like, what's the best thing to do here? How do we do this and not feel awful later?
So you just chose to stay the course and whatever happens, happens.
Stayed the course, whatever happens, happens.
That's fair.
As we went over top of it, I heard the thunk.
Yeah.
I can still hear that sound.
Yeah. You did a good thing, though.
I still believe I did the better option there.
And that's a choice under pressure, too. It's not like you got time to think it through. And you're potentially, depending on what decision you make, you could be risking your own personal safety, too.
Right.
Which is, to avoid it, you might hit,
Yeah.
There's other factors at play.
And I wasn't a kindergartner, but I had to have been 16, maybe 17, but I think I was only 16.
Yeah.
The bird on the yard.
Yeah. So you're the kid again. Now, as that child, you may not have the wisdom to carefully and quickly end this bird's misery, right? That's pretty normal. A child would not have that wisdom to know how to do that correctly.
Right.
But a reasonable adult may. And a lot of adults may be scared to get a little beak of blood on their hands.
Yeah.
But a bravely compassionate person would not hesitate to do the right thing. Just like hitting skunks in your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
That could have gone so many different ways. You didn't have the time to hesitate, and you made what I would think is a compassionate choice.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of doctors in that position that are fully capable of being that bravely compassionate person to do the right thing.
Right.
I strongly believe no one has the right to dictate that another person should be forced to prolong the length of their existence. But we all deserve the right to be compassionately aided in choosing when we go. Because we are not battered birds. We are people. We have big, bumpy brains, and I believe we can make those complex decisions.
I do feel like what you stated just a second ago, that people shouldn't be able to force someone to prolong their life. Like, force is a strong word there, because I feel like, so say like you came to me and said like, you want to go get euthanized.
Sure.
Like ASAP, we're going to, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I try to talk you out of it.
That's coercion, not force.
Right.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, I would even, if we had a conversation about it and you still felt like it, I would probably drive down there and, like, at least try to, like, take up your time and distract you from it. Like, I'm not going to, lock you in a chair from going to see a doctor about euthanasia, but...
Well, I think even if you did, it's fair. Like, if you forcibly stopped a friend, right? Your friends fucked up in their apartment, they're going to shoot themselves. I feel like while I might not be the type of person to, like, call the cops to do it, I feel like if you intervene on a friend's behalf like that, whether it's showing up, kicking down their door, or it's calling the cops or whatever, while I don't feel like someone necessarily has the right to do that, I think it's their choice. Like, just because they don't necessarily have that right, in my opinion, doesn't mean they can't make that decision anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is acting against a person's free will, I think it's kind of in their own free will to make that decision to act against your rights. But in regards to aligning policies, I think the policies do have to be in line with what I would hope people could come to think of as objective rights and not personal.
And
that's kind of abstract, but
I think that's also when the idea of like mental illness or even like one of the things in the debate that got brought up a little bit was like dementia patients and stuff. And it's like, they're not in a position when the person that's talking about going through with it, like that person is not in a state to responsibly make that decision, or that they would, normally make that decision otherwise. Like if someone's in, they go through highs and lows of depression and stuff, or like, manic bipolar shit or something. Like they're in a state where they were going to make decisions that they normally wouldn't make, or they're going to be, I don't know, more impulsive to do things like that. Those kind of things make it more difficult, because if that was a situation where like, I don't know, you said that you like, relapsed or something, and you're like real strung out and fucked up and, talking about committing suicide or something, like, yeah, that's when I would absolutely like handcuff your shit to a chair and like, dude, you're not gonna fucking like, no.
But maybe I'd be so stringy at that point, I could just string cheese right
out. String cheese right
Now, let me address the complicated cases you mentioned, such as dementia, and then do you want to look at potential pros and cons on euthanasia? You want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you agree with this too, but in regards to complicated cases such as dementia, minors, or what would be considered non-critical care type cases, like there have been cases of people that they get dumped by their partner and they decide to go enroll in one of these euthanasia programs. There have been, from what I understand, like a handful of cases where something like that has gone through, but it's not as black and white simple as they just lost a relationship. Like typically those would be considered a non-critical care case. So in regards to complicated cases, dementia, children, non-critical care, the two questions that must be resolved to them being able to undergo voluntary euthanasia is if they are able to offer consent and if they meet the program's criteria. Now, the program's criteria is what it is. It's whatever that country, that medical program, that hospital, whatever stipulations must be met, whatever hurdles must be jumped. You have to meet all of those qualifications. But the other big part is if they are able to offer consent. And if both of those questions are not answered correctly, then they should not qualify. And that's typically how it works. If you have dementia, even though you could be the most prime candidate for a voluntary euthanasia, you might not be able to because you are not able to consent in your own stable mental state or whatever.
Exactly. You give consent and then you walk out of the building and don't know what the fuck happened 10 minutes ago.
So as unfortunate as it is sometimes, you have to be able to meet the criteria and consent, which really rules out a lot of the more iffy cases.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons people object to it is that they believe legalization of euthanasia would increase the scope, right? Like as soon as you legalize it, it's inevitable that it becomes much bigger and more available to more people, and that more people unnecessarily enroll in these programs and die. And that's a big worry by a lot of people.
Right.
I think of that as a fearful way to approach a change.
Yeah. So like there are, that is a factual thing that happened in Belgium.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are 3 times as high as they were after they legalized it. And that I feel like I want to go back to, I kind of go back to the people there recognize that they have this option available.
Mm-hmm.
And while, yes, they are making a choice to end their life sooner than they would have, even if it's not a, fully out of, a suffering and, terminal illness thing, they are choosing the way they want to go. The problem with that is dependence. Like if you have kids, family, people that are close to you, like,
right.
That's huge, right? Like that's fucked. Like to lose somebody you love is terrible, but the fact that they're going through it like that, I mean, at least it's not as sudden as, direct suicide. But I feel like that's my main qualm with that is like more people being able to choose this option and taking it is less of a thing, is less of a problem to me. What the problem to me is that these people didn't need to go, and there are other people that are affected by that.
That's something we actually spoke a lot about when we talked about Norm Macdonald's
right
death,
yeah,
because really having kids changes everything. If someone is depending on you to be there and you decide to leave, it does radically alter the morality of the choices you make.
Right.
All your choices are weighed differently when someone else is dependent on you.
And I think there's something to be said about going through with that option because inherently, like, we're animals. We have a will to survive. We have this drive, this, like you're in a car crash, you're in a car and, your instincts kick in when someone's, swerves the oncoming lane, like swerves in front of you. There's an instinct that kicks in for that. Or, the guy that got his arm stuck in the fucking canyon or whatever. And like he cut it off so that he could potentially survive. Like that kind of shit.
Supposedly that real video, it got leaked. But it's like been pretty much scrubbed off the internet, but someone close to him, like he did a private screening for a few people in his family and like a couple friends, and one of them chose to sell it. They took a copy and sold it and like betrayed him.
Wow.
But it got like hardcore scrubbed off the internet, but supposedly like hardcore internet collectors of gore shit still trade it. But I don't know if that's a myth or not. Because that's
pretty wild shit.
Yeah, that'd be a hell of a video.
Yeah. That's a wild POV.
Yeah.
POV, your arm's stuck in the canyon.
But we talked about this privately. I think we both kind of agree that what matters most in setting up a euthanasia program is what the exact guidelines are. Just because another country does it one way, or that the scope of how many operations they perform increases over time, it doesn't have to be that way. It depends on how the guidelines are set up and that they are enacted responsibly. The slope is only slippery if you grease it. It's just because something could be a slope doesn't mean it is. You have to. It can be done correctly and responsibly. It might be hard, but it's doable.
Yeah.
And is often the case with these type of things. I also feel like a big part of this, and this may be my subjective thing, is that the progress is often stalled in the medical world by religious fervor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always found it super or awfully interested how religious folk of all creeds and colors have the desperate need for man's law to reflect God's law.
Yeah.
Because you would think God's law would be enough. you would think their, most important thing ever, the supreme being's spoken word, would be a little bit more important than man's law. but there is always an attempt made to dictate man's law to reflect their values, their God's law. And this can play out, for example, in cases by not allowing a critically ill person to end their suffering. And that happens like Jehovah's Witness. There's actually special ICD-10 codes for medical coding for patients that are Jehovah's Witnesses, because if they are like fundamental or whatever, they will not accept blood products. So there are, like, anytime there's a Jehovah's Witness that doesn't accept blood transfusions, there's special medical codes for that, because there are so many times they like will die or need extra treatment because they will not accept blood products. So like when you have, what I would consider radical religious viewpoints, and you have a bunch of people that believe crazy shit, it affects things like medical systems.
That shit's wild.
But what I find the most interesting about it is like they believe in God's law, but they need man's law to reflect it. Yeah. So instead of like choosing how they live for themselves, it goes back to that selfish thing where they feel like the need to oppress their tyrannical viewpoint upon other people.
Yeah.
Which I would consider a godless behavior.
Yeah. That's one of those, like, in their head, what they're probably thinking is like, I'm saving so many people by, voting against this, and that makes me good in the eyes of God. But what 100%. You're doing is you're removing the free will that God bestowed upon these people. It's like, I always like the argument, like, if you're against abortions, don't have one. If you're against, euthanasia, don't have it done.
That's you can't fine. Save me.
Yeah.
You can't save me from myself.
It's like you have the choice to act upon this if you want to, but if it's something that you don't believe in, then just don't fucking do it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's equivalent to saying like, oh, I can't eat pork, so I choose not to eat pork, so it should be illegal to eat pork.
I'm going to choose that you don't eat pork either.
Yeah, exactly. No one should be able to, because I can't, not because I can't, but because I choose not to, no one else should be able to.
It's so selfish. And side note, if you're a doctor that goes to church, you should have your medical license revoked immediately, because you're a fucking idiot.
It's like what is it? The Christian Science Center. It's like, that's not, you're not, so it's not science is what you're saying. It's not science.
That's funny. I got a few more points, but some of this I think will kind of dip into some of my criticisms of euthanasia a little bit. Mm-hmm. So my biggest qualm would be with the fact that I don't want doctors killing people. Now, it's not because I think doctors are super cool, special people, but I don't believe we should murder criminals, right? I don't believe our government should have the power to kill people in prisons with the death penalty.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't want them making those choices, because mistakes will be made. And
they committed atrocities. Why give them the easy way out?
I don't know. I
make them serve their sentence.
I don't know. A lot of people, there's a ton of people on death row that would rather be alive than dead too, though.
Right. No, exactly. That's the joke I'm making. But
yeah. But I think as soon as you give any system that power, whether it's a prison system or doctors to act as angels of mercy, as soon as you give a system that power, you are accepting the fact that there will be mistakes or abuses of power. It's just like the NSA, right? As soon as we gave them Patriot Act shit, as soon as they're allowed to record phone calls and collect metadata, as soon as you give that power, it's going to be used to the fullest extent. And doctors may be the best group of people to be given that leeway, because they're probably going to handle it more responsibly than our prison systems, but it does make me hesitate a bit because there will be mistakes.
Of course, yeah.
That makes me hesitate a little bit because a mistake in this arena is like so massive.
You know, you said a minute ago that you don't believe doctors to be, you know, special people, but there is a whole sect of doctors just called specialists. And that's what they would be there for. My
Special doctor agent.
Yeah, you know, so you would have a doctor, like it's not, you know, your regular fucking, you know, pediatric care fucking doctor that's
every
like
doctor's.
Also does, you know, murders on the side.
Special murder doctors.
Yeah. Getting paid to do murders on the side. It would be a specialist or someone that's like, you know, everyone starts somewhere but has experience with it and like focuses in it, and
they'd be like our modern day plague doctors, Dr. Deaths.
Imagine you're getting a new doctor that's never actually done it before themselves. They always they shadow someone else, and you go in for your euthanasia and they botch it.
It's my first time.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry, it's my first time. You wake up, you're like, what the fuck?
So I will say I do have some hesitations because at my most core, I believe in assisted suicide far more than euthanasia, but I still think it should be more of an accepted option at the very least. Now, I think the argument that doctors should be held to uphold their oath of do no harm, and that's the reason they shouldn't be allowed to aid in euthanasias, is really silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because doctors harm people every goddamn day. It's part of helping people. And that Hippocratic oath is more like a hypocritic oath, in my opinion.
Ooh, Steven got him.
Ooh, because those doctors are big fucking...
You know, write you a script for that burn.
I find it very appropriate for legitimate cases in which a person does not have the power to dictate their circumstances. Mm-hmm. But I do think if you are well enough to have the autonomy to end your consciousness, I think it would be morally wrong to delegate that responsibility unto another person, unless absolutely necessary. Bar the extreme exceptions in which you physically cannot do it. I think if you want to ride that train to the sleepy city in the sky, you have to punch your own ticket. I can't.
That's so beautiful. Honestly, it makes me think of like a Ghibli movie.
Spirited
Away. Yeah.
Dr. Spirited Away me, but I just can't. I just don't think it's right to put that on someone else, because even if they are a fucking psychopath or just really objective or impartial, have wisdom, whatever, the fact that someone else has to end your life puts a big burden on someone else. And if you are able to do that yourself, I don't think that responsibility should fall upon our medical system to do it for you. I think it should be acceptable to do that. I think they should potentially aid you, whether it's assisted suicide or just accepting your choices, giving you the means, whatever. But if you can do the very little physical requirements to do that yourself, I don't think it's fair to have a whole system designed for someone else to do it for you.
Well, Steven, I have good news for you.
Okay.
There are as many as an average of 43,000 people in the U.S. alone who punch their own ticket, as you say, annually.
But is this just regular suicide?
Yes, it's just suicide, I'm saying, yes.
Okay, now, that's different.
It's very different. It is very different.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is we have that option in the way of the people that go that route, that are willing to, and it's a lot more, that's where that waiting period thing comes into play, where it's the people that are committing suicide, that are that may, very well be a candidate for, euthanasia or something like that. Some of them for sure could fall into that category, but so many of them don't.
Right. And they still choose to enact it on their own.
So part of having that option available, I feel like, especially if it's regulated properly and you have those options, someone can decide like, I want to, like, I'm done, I'm ready to commit suicide, but they're not trying to pull the trigger on themselves like that just yet. Like they don't have that buildup.
Do they deserve it? Do they deserve for someone else to do it?
No. Here's let me finish here.
Yeah.
So them going in to, make an appointment, talk to a doctor about it. You get your consultation, whatever first, and then they deny you. You've spent, whatever that doctor then has to go talk to another doctor, and they, like we said, like they go back and forth to talk about it, confirm. In that interim period, maybe you cool down.
Yeah.
You get your shit together. The potential that could actually save or stop some people from committing suicide.
And it got
by giving them that legal
system.
option to go to.
Yeah. And it roped you into the medical system. It more than like it should be or likely is like mandatory you're getting, whether it's mental health or just general medical resources, right? Like if you go in and you don't meet the criteria for euthanasia, but you're super depressed, mentally ill, or you have a cancer and can't treat it because you're homeless, you should not be walking out of that medical facility without resources. And that may be a lot of people's like entrance through the gateway to other help.
That being said, for that purpose, if you're, following along that train of thought, fucking make it covered by, Medicaid or whatever the fuck, a national fucking health insurance or something, because that it being an expensive procedure is why most people don't go to the fucking doctor, don't go to the fucking hospital.
Yeah.
That's why they don't get therapy and shit like that, is because it's fucking expensive.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're giving that option, at least make the consultation free, something like that. Like you don't pay money to, you don't even pay fucking copay to go do this.
Yeah. I actually heard Obama does every American's first euthanasia free, personally. Dr. Obama.
Dr. Obama.
That was really dumb.
I was trying to follow your train of thought for a minute there.
We actually know someone. I want to choose my words carefully. We know someone that died this week from a septic tooth. And it had been ongoing for like a year. And they did pass. Like they hold personal responsibility for not getting it treated, right? They neglected it for like a year. I don't know if that was out of fear of going or the financial reasons. I believe they didn't have insurance. But to me, I think of like dying from something as simply fixed as like a septic tooth that took a year to get really bad, right?
Right.
That is like the pinnacle of an American tragedy.
Yeah.
The American healthcare system so hard to get into, or just so unapproachable or whatever, that a person wouldn't get something like that treated is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah. You and I have talked about that before, where it's like for a long time, you were getting covered for insurance, unemployed or like shit like that. And it was like, meanwhile, I was, working 80 hours a week and I made too much money to get insurance.
It's so fucked.
And it's like, true, I'm making some money, but it's not like I was making enough that I could just afford to spend, the rate that they offered through work. Eventually they like had like a work, benefit health thing, but it would be like $500 something a month. And it was like, fuck, dog. Like I was, at the time I'm like, I'm 25. I'm healthy. I'm not making enough in my mind to warrant that being worth it even. But even still, like it's $500 fucking dollars a month. Like, God damn.
So at that particular time, I was in school, but it is so unfair because I probably got 50 to, let's say, $80,000 in medical treatment for like 2 to 3 years. Like a lot of fucking money.
So were you did you co-pays and shit like that?
No.
Nothing?
All Medicare, as long as you're covered, it's all free.
That's fucking wild.
So
because even if you spend the $500 something a month on health insurance, you still have a deductible that you have to pay. And unless you have something like bad happen or you're at the fucking doctor every month, you're not meeting that deductible. You're spending like $25, $35 copays every time you go in, and you're not, unless you're getting crazy procedures and shit done. And that's still, even if it's covered by the fucking health insurance that you have.
Yeah.
There's so many different, what's his name? Brian David Gilbert just made a video not too long ago about that. Of he researched a bunch of the medical care stuff because he was looking for, he had to get health insurance now. Yeah. So he documented his process and tried to lay out a bunch of information. And then even then when he's done, it's super confusing. And he's still there's so many more variables to all of this.
Yeah. I mean, now I work in healthcare technically, and it's beyond fucked up. I can't understand my policies for shit. They're so complicated and arbitrary, all the different types of appointment, what qualifies, what doesn't. They misclassify things constantly. You have to fight for every fucking thing. So now that I'm working and I have good insurance, now those same appointments I paid nothing for cost me $250 an appointment that I have to go to all the time. So it's it's such a fucked system, which is part of the reason I feel like in the US, at least for now, I don't really think on a massive scale we could enact euthanasia very well. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't think that should change, but the realist in me does kind of feel like I don't really think our system is qualified or set up correctly enough to risk handing the power for the medical system to kill people. Right. I don't trust them enough to give them that power right now. It doesn't mean I don't want that to change, but it does kind of feel like it's such a broken system to enact that much more responsibility.
Yeah. I feel like what's more of a prominent thing, I definitely feel like it should be legal to have the option to do it. What's a larger problem that I see is I pay tax money. I should be taken care of. If my tax money is going to go to give other people insurance and pay for them, why can't I have that too? That's always been
what too?
Insurance. So that's where that was part of the thing of that's what bothered me is I am working and I'm paying a bunch of taxes and I'm giving money to the government all the time and I'm not seeing the benefits of that.
No, not at all. I mean,
meanwhile,
I was getting more medical treatment than I make now. You know, I got more money in medical treatment than I make working.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's fucking bonkers.
It will take me 3 years of working full time to make the amount of money I got in 1 year of medical treatment for free.
And you can, if you wanted to put it into this perspective, you could say, well, now you are paying now that you're paying it off. You're paying into the system through taxes.
100%.
The treatment that you got, if you wanted to look at it that way.
Yeah.
But in a situation like me, still. I've never experienced that.
You've put in more than you've got.
Right. So I looked at the stimulus checks that way. Mm-hmm. of like, I guess I'll take it. It's my benefit. That's my paid vacation that I never got.
The people who didn't take those checks are fucking idiots.
Who didn't take the checks?
I know a couple people because they were so opposed to everything going on. They don't want to rely on the government. They think COVID's bullshit. They don't want to be for various different reasons. But if you didn't take those checks and cash it and do something to better your life with it, you're a fucking idiot.
I mean, fucking pay your rent.
Yeah,
it's something
absurd. I knew
make a car payment.
Yeah, I gave them such a hard time about it. A couple more negative arguments, and then we'll start to wrap up. But I think one of the downsides is that it could, this is part of the slippery slope a little bit, is that it could potentially encourage suicide. I don't really think so, though.
I mean, that's how we were saying, like in Belgium, where it became like the scope of what was acceptable to go in for, and like what they could, quote unquote, treat with euthanasia or assisted suicide was opened and broadened. So if you're not opening that range, if you're doing it responsibly and sticking with a plan, then you're not.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't encourage more people to go in.
Now, here's a hypothetical. Let's picture imaginary country. Doesn't exist. This is just hypothetical. You have a little island country, a little dictatorship, right? Mm-hmm. Full of abuses of power by the king on all the poor people, right?
Yeah.
These people live a miserable life. They have to give all their food to the king, and they're all starving. They don't know what the outside world is like. They hate living, and they all want to die. Mm-hmm. Now, one day a boat comes to the island, picks them all up, and takes them to the free world, right?
Yeah.
But they get there, and they hate it here because they don't know what this strange land is like. And then someone tells them about this medical program where they could just choose to die, right? They don't have to be here anymore. And they're so oppressed and poor, and their life is so miserable. This whole country of people decide they all want to die together. They want to Jonestown it up in the hospital. One of the arguments potentially against euthanasia could be is what happens when you have massive populations of people that decide they no longer want to participate in life. Do we let large groups of people, like where do you close the entrance to the gateway? I think that's a kind of a complicated question to answer. I don't know how you would address that when you have groups of, a ton of sad emo high schoolers that the moment they turn 18 are enrolling in these programs or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's something to consider.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, so of course the emo kids, the fucking goth kids that are like,
it becomes fashionable.
I see that being a lot more realistic than, a group from a nation, like a large amount of people that decide to do it, like large population shit like that. Like it does happen in already, like you said, Jonestown shit, where they decide. Where you get, I guess they didn't really decide to. They kind of brainwashed
60-40. 60-40.
Yeah.
But, you could have a bunch of people mutilated in a terror attack or a hurricane, and mm-hmm. they come and get on these lists. Like, hypothetical. It would be problematic if you have a massive backlist of people who are either clogging up this system that people legitimately are looking for relief through euthanasia, and the system's clogged up from tons of people, or you have to figure out a way to deal with like large numbers of people wanting to participate. Like, it is problematic.
So they go through the process just like everyone else, and it's
just a consideration. These are kind of arguments against. I'm not
exactly
saying I agree, but now here's one I do tend to believe this is a legitimate criticism. So let's say we have euthanasia programs.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes normalized. It's a thing used. It often helps people. Now, one of the downsides I do imagine being not necessarily fairly often, but a real thing that would happen is that you could really hinder hope in people that have dire diagnoses. Like you have a very critical cancer and you're told you have a year left, or in cases where you have a misdiagnosis of something extremely critical, in which both of those cases, in which a person that remains super hopeful, like uses placebo energy and like positivity and going to all the possible treatments they can imagine, that positive effect often can make a difference in those really tentative cases, right? And if you have instances like that, especially with misdiagnoses, where a person, as soon as they receive information of something that critical that they think they're for sure going to die, they, instead of trying to hold out hope, they know they have a program that can put them out of their misery when the time comes. And in those circumstances, it really could discourage people from hope in instances that they could ultimately survive or prevail through.
Yeah.
I think I would imagine that could happen.
I believe it
regularly.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I don't think I agree that it would be like I don't know. I guess I don't think it would be a very commonplace.
But every time someone gets cancer,
it would be a thing where they
right?
think about it.
Yeah.
But I think that still goes back to the will to survive that most people have, maybe in a stronger form than, a couple fucking depressed kids on a podcast. But I feel like that it will, the thought bubble will pop up in their head of like, I've just been basically given a death sentence. Like I could go through the chemo and go through the treatment plans and try these options, and like those suck.
I'm going to take the way out now.
Yeah, and I could, but there is this option.
Yeah.
And
that might offer a lot of people, like, it might ease their suffering that they know they have that.
Yeah, that's a salvation of sorts.
But for every single depressed person that gets a critical diagnosis, it may really discourage them from attempting to fight back too. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think that's a fair consideration, because I think that would be a fairly regular occurrence in people feeling to discourage or lessen that will to live.
And it is a fair thing to consider. I also want to point out, though, that is still their choice to make.
I agree.
Within that, yeah.
It's really interesting, though, because I could see myself in a situation like that. Like, find out I'm having these stomach issues. I find out I have colon cancer. If I knew there was a really simple and easy euthanasia program, I don't know. I would feel a lot less inclined to want to go through chemo, right? Like, I could see how that can play out in a person's psyche on how they deal with an illness.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Final thoughts. Where do you? I think we probably landed similar places. What you got?
I got one final question for you.
Okay.
Which do you value in life more, quality or quantity?
I think overall my life choices dictate that I choose quality, but I think more and more I'm kind of switching gears to quantity.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like almost the opposite on my end. I feel like for a while I was kind of like, through my 20s, it felt more like a quantity thing, or where the longer you have to do stuff, even if not every day is a a wonderful adventure, you can
Right.
make up for it because you have more opportunities to do it, where
Yeah.
the quality of life, I feel like, is more of it's more of a priority to me, at least in the last several years.
That makes a lot of sense because we're losing time too.
Yeah.
So it becomes more valuable.
That's why I never understood why old people drive so slow. It's like, fucking floor it, dog. What do you got, like 10 years? What happens if you get in an accident? Come on, you'll be all right.
That's hilarious.
You got to get some shit done.
That kind of makes me think we're passing each other in the middle of our shifting value on those two things.
Yeah.
Like,
and
we might be pretty in sync with that.
I'm sure it'll change again too. I think a lot of it depends on where you're at in life. And like, for me, like, I'm just getting into a place where I have personal time now.
Circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I put some value on it before, but it was a precious thing to me. My time when I wasn't working, when I could enjoy myself or enjoy friends and company and whatever. But I didn't have a balance on that with my work life. It was mostly work. So when I have now the opportunity to have what I feel is a life, something outside of work that's consistent and balanced in a way, I feel a lot more like I'm resting in that a little bit. I find more comfort in that.
Purpose
enjoying
is
that.
changing your values.
Right.
So I think in conclusion, I land that I fully embrace assisted suicide. I think when people are physically able, they should choose to do it themselves because I think it is immoral to put that burden on another person. But overall, I still think it would be a good thing for voluntary euthanasia to be an option. I would hope less people choose it unless they absolutely need to. But overall, I think it has my tentative support, and I feel it very passionately when I see cases of people who are unable to get that medical help that I feel they truly deserve. So
I think we definitely fall in the same place. I hadn't really considered before we even started talking about it, the moral ethics of relying on someone else to do it.
It's tricky.
Putting that burden on them, because that's a heavy fucking burden. Even if it's like that's your job kind of thing. Yeah. That's like, that adds up in someone's head.
Like in the old days, the hangmen were the people that were like typically like the alcoholics or the like really fucked up dudes that would be willing to take very little money to kill people on a regular basis because their lives were fucked. Like, that's a heavy psychological toll to put on doctors on a fairly regular basis when they're supposed to be like concentrating on saving people. To put that heavy burden on those doctors is like, it's not something you can necessarily emotionally prepare for. Not every doctor is going to be able to do it. That's a lot of stress and burden to put on other people.
And one could argue that even asking them to write the prescription for you to get your morphine or whatever and do it yourself is still a burden.
And many doctors won't. It often goes to the doctor who is willing to do that because of that. But
asking them to plunge it into you,
that's different.
Yeah.
It's more for sure.
It's the, I didn't pull the trigger, but I told them to kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still an actionable responsibility.
Now, I do think if you had a personal relationship with that doctor, let's say, like, I know people that their family doctor did prescribe, like, their grandma a big bottle of morphine. They all sat around with her, right? Like, they helped her die as a family. I think that is a very honorable thing. If I'm bleeding out from a gut wound and I do have the ability to kill myself, but instead I go to my friend who I was just in battle with and I ask them to help ease me out, I think that is an honorable thing. But I think putting that on to strangers like that that's hard.
Yeah, that's rough.
Well, I think once again we are in conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
We
ending on a high note. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this was a fun discussion. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I think next week we have some ideas for some potentially interesting discussions. I enjoyed this today. Really enjoyed playing chess. We're going to do that again sometime soon. And I don't know. We got some cool ideas for the future, for sure.
Fuck yeah. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Thank you to Approaching Human for the use of his music. You can find his work on SoundCloud at Approaching-Human.
Thanks, John.
Make sure to check out the show page at Trash Cats Trashcast on Instagram for news and arts from the show. Also check out Facebook for the memes.
For the memes, if you're super bored, you can check out my trashy art on Instagram at Skyzix, SKYZSCX. And shouts out to those kids for destroying that Van Gogh. I truly wish you the best in court. It
the
sucks,
soup kids.
But yeah, shouts out to the soup kids. Dishonorable mentions go out to both Kanye Peppers, and dishonorable mention to the CIA, of course, for their podcast. So
that's going to be all for us today. Stay classy, eat trashy.
Go fast, eat trash.